Hey, what's up everybody, it's me, and we're here back with part 6 for What If Naruto Had Anti-Chakra. If you guys have not already, please be sure to go hit that like button, comment down below what you think of the video, and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this from me. Anyhow, let's just go and get into this part for part 6 of What If Naruto Had Anti-Chakra. Naruto waits in the stands along with Sakura as they prepare for Sakura's match against Ino. With Naruto having easily taken down both of his opponents, and now having secured the spot for both him and Sasuke in the Chunin exams, so Naruto was relaxing as he polished his blades, with them now being all cleaned up and all the dust, dirt, and blood having been removed from them. It was soon time for Sakura's turn, and Naruto wished her good luck, as Sakura gave him a thumbs up as she hops down into the arena below and would fight Ino. As Sakura and Ino's fight would begin, it would pretty much go the same as the original, unmemorable, but in this version Sakura would win, as her stamina and strength overall is just a bit higher than Ino's due to her training with Naruto before the Chunin exams, meaning that Sakura would be the one to get up, while Ino would stay down at the end of their fight. Naruto would congratulate Sakura on her win, and Sakura would then be taken to the medical team, where she would begin to be patched up. Hinata is really worried about Naruto. We see her watching him from afar, as she doesn't know what's going on in his head or what happened to him, with Hinata not really knowing what happened to Sasuke, or where he is to be, for a matter of fact. But she would know something would be wrong, and Naruto wasn't acting like his usual self. Meanwhile, outside the Chunin exams, we see a figure. This figure is Kabuto. Orochimaru, after having escaped Naruto's grasp, had contacted Kabuto and ordered him to try and find where Sasuke was, so he could imprint the curse mark on at least one of his targets, saying that Naruto was a no-go, and that seals would not function on him. Meaning they'll have to find some other way to run tests on anti-chakra, or more specifically Naruto's anti-chakra. Anyhow, Orochimaru, after having sent this order, would have Kabuto go off. We see Kabuto now hunting around the Leaf Village and looking for any trace of Sasuke's chakra. This would be when he'd come across Kakashi standing outside a door. This door would be the room to Sasuke's room, actually. And so this would be when a small confrontation would occur between Kakashi and Kabuto. Kabuto, using his medical chakra scalpel, would then attack Kakashi, who would block with a Chidori. As the two chakra blades would interact, a spark of chakra would then light up in the hospital, causing some distress as well as some sensory ninja to notice, as more shinobi would then head towards the scene. At the end of the scuffle with a bit of taijutsu, Kabuto throwing a left kick towards Kakashi's side, and Kakashi blocking with his right arm. At that point, other shinobi would enter the area, and then Kabuto would be forced to escape, as he uses his chakra scalpel to slash a hole through the wall, before jumping to the city street below and running off. He had now successfully completed his mission in finding where Sasuke was located for his master Orochimaru, so he would go back without getting tailed and report to Orochimaru exactly where Sasuke would be, as well as that Kakashi was guarding him. Meanwhile, back at the Chunin exams, it's now time for Gaara and Rock Lee's fight. Naruto would be particularly interested in this one since he knows that Lee can't use ninjutsu, and he'd be rooting for him because of this. Naruto will be watching with great interest as Lee's fight begins, with Gaara seemingly having the upper hand. The fight would continue to the same point that it did in the original, where Lee would then eventually be forced to use the gates, and when he does, he outspeeds Gaara's sand, allowing him to actually get some good blows on Gaara and cause Gaara's bloodlust to return. As Gaara's insanity is beginning to rise, he would know that he must kill his opponent, as he would then begin to wrap his sand around as the fight was pretty much over, and Lee was down, as Gaara shoots his sand out towards Lee's leg to try and shatter it, or even worse, kill him. Naruto would be one of the first people to move, as both Naruto and Guy would be on the floor immediately, as Guy blocks the other sand attacks coming forward, and Naruto swipes down with his hand as he touches the sand, killing all the chakra in it immediately, with the central ability of the sand that Gaara can feel through it also disappearing. What the? Gaara would be surprised, as he has never encountered something like this before that could actually deactivate his sand, and this man, Guy, he's so fast you couldn't even see him move. Naruto's speed in this timeline was fast enough to where he could use his anti-chakra and disable the sand that was connected to Gaara's chakra in time before Lee's leg was crushed. Lee would breathe out a sigh of thanks as he grabs Naruto's hand who would help him up. "That was a good fight, Lee," Naruto would say. He pat him on the back as he tells Lee to keep it up, and that his taijutsu is actually pretty impressive, with him giving Lee a fist bump. Naruto would feel a sort of closeness to Lee, almost like looking into a reflection of himself. Neji would scoff as he walks away, thinking that Lee had to be saved by a genin who was a year younger than him. How pathetic. But Neji would be intimidated by Naruto's power. Being able to match speed with Guy Sensei? Impressive. Guy would turn around as he was also interested with how Naruto had gotten there so fast, complimenting him and saying that Kakashi must have been training him well. Anyway, enough of that. Naruto would help Lee, who had been a bit injured, back to the stands and sit him down. Hinata saying this would also be relieved, having seen that Naruto still has the same kindness she is used to, but that darkness from earlier scared her. The look she had seen in Naruto's eyes was nothing like it had been before. It was almost like an abyss, an empty darkness that one could never return from. As Naruto turns his back to Lee and walks away, his smile that he had put on for Lee would slowly turn to a frown as he walks away. Disappointed, thinking in his head that he had hoped the Lee could win, but deep down, he knew it was too much for him to handle. Suddenly a tear began to run down Naruto's face as he's surprised. He'd hold his hand up and touch his cheek, thinking, why am I crying? The reason for that is because Naruto by now has already given up on that past self. The self before him, now, his current self, that had failed beforehand, the one that could never do any jutsu, the one that had hope in his heart, hope for the future. Hope that he could become something greater than himself, just through hard work and trying his best. Someone just like Lee. As Naruto sits back down the stands rubbing his eyes, Sakura would ask what happened with Naruto saying nothing, as he ignores her. Sakura wouldn't push the issue as she looks away, already beginning to get a handle on how this Naruto acts. Sakura and Naruto's sibling-like relationship would already be pretty apparent in this version of the timeline. And speaking of, here comes the main event of the end of this phase of the Chunin exams, as Hinata would then face her opponent, Neji, in battle. Naruto would be watching with great interest, not in the hopes that Hinata could win the fight, but in hopes that he could devolve some of Neji's techniques from this fight, and maybe begin to plan a strategy against him if he has to fight him in the next phase. Since Naruto already has a plan against Gaara, after realizing that his anti-chakra actually works on his sand. As the battle begins, Naruto would watch intently, and Hinata would get the wrong idea, unfortunately. This scene is actually kind of sad in this version because Hinata thinks that Naruto's cheering her on, as she can feel his gaze lingering on her and Neji. Naruto believes in me. He's watching this fight. I have to prove that I can win too. Hinata be thinking as the fight begins, with the two gentle fist users now beginning to clash. As each prepares for combat, they would activate their dojutsu. Byakugan! As the two prepare to clash, Neji would rush forward as he throws a single two-prong attack with his two fingers towards one of Hinata's chakra points. Hinata would barely be able to dodge his speed as she uses her own hand filled with chakra to block the attack as she dodges left out of the way, her foot sweeping as she tries to throw a kick at Neji's undefended left-hand side. As she tries to throw this kick, Neji would suddenly begin to spin as he then flies backwards, using this to move away from Hinata, throwing two kunai. Hinata would easily be able to block these kunai of her own as they fall to the ground, clattering with metal against concrete. As Hinata and Neji's battle would continue, it would become just as brutal as it had in the original, with Hinata getting beaten down over and over by Neji. Something would begin to stir within Naruto, as he remembers something. He remembers what had happened with Hinata when he had saved her back then, when he watched as those bullies were picking on her and he'd ran in and taken all of them down. But then he also remembered what happened to her afterwards. How he hurt her. Naruto would stay silent as he's holding back what he wants to say. Naruto's fists would be almost white from how much he's tightened them as he watches Hinata getting brutally beaten over and over by Neji, until eventually Naruto would snap with one line. As Neji watches as Hinata standing there breathing heavily, with having taken most of her chakra points out, she would say one thing, that she wouldn't give up, she won't quit, because that's her ninja way. As she's standing there, thinking about Naruto and how he had saved her, Neji would say that she's a fool, and that pure hard work alone will never be able to defeat natural talent, as he rushes forward with one final attack. As Naruto grips his hands into the railing, he would shout out in a loud voice, which would cause everyone to flinch in the audience to stop, as Neji's attack barely is about to touch Hinata before he even feels himself freezing. Why am I? Naruto would have no idea what to say next, as he knows that if Hinata took that attack, then she would go down, maybe for good. Before Naruto can say that's the end of the match, Hinata would try and throw an attack, and that would be the end, as Neji finishes off her last chakra points, taking Hinata down to the ground, unconscious. The referee would tell Naruto not to interrupt any more fights, and if he did, then he'd be disqualified. Naruto would tell the referee to butt out, saying that's none of his business anyway, as Naruto would have no idea why he had intervened. He would sit back down defeated, but not knowing why, as Neji himself would smirk, saying that he was right, that the main Hyuga household was nothing but talk. Naruto would then suddenly say out loud to Neji that if they fight in the Chunin exams, he's going to show Neji how weak he really is. He's going to prove to him that his natural genius is going to be worth nothing, like dust in the wind. Naruto's eyes will have now hardened as he has a goal in mind, and that is to crush Neji. That's it! That's why! Naruto would remember as he sees Sasuke on the ground in his mind, with semblance sticking out of his body and blood pooling around him, as we hear Naruto's voice claim, "That's going to be my Nindo! I'll protect everyone!" Everyone, Naruto would be thinking. That includes Hinata. I'll take Neji down. I'll avenge them. We see a picture of Hinata on the ground unconscious, as well as Sasuke from back during the Land of Waves, as Naruto takes on yet another burden onto his shoulders. As the Chunin exams end, Naruto would walk out the door, opening both double doors as he walks out, leaving the other contestants in the room behind. Naruto would be walking around the city when he decides he's going to get something to eat, and this would be when he would find a strange old man with white hair and interesting sandals with a red robe. This would be when Naruto would watch a very interesting sight, as this man would suddenly use a jutsu to escape some women chasing after him. What? The woman would run into Naruto as they ask if he'd seen a pervy old man running around anywhere, and Naruto would point into a direction, the opposite of where Jiraiya had actually went. As they all run off in a panic and anger, we would suddenly hear a laugh as Jiraiya would then come down saying, "Hey, thanks kid, what's your name?" Naruto would turn around and ask him for his first, with Jiraiya saying, "Oh?" Jiraiya would introduce himself as the Toad Sage Jiraiya from Mount Miyaboku. Naruto would say that sounds like a fake title, with him then turning away to walk away, with Jiraiya holding his hand up telling him to wait. Naruto would sigh as he introduced himself, saying that his name is Naruto Uzumaki. Minato's son, huh? Jiraiya be thinking. Naruto would walk out shaking his hand, saying it was nice to meet him, but he's gotta go train for the next phase of his Chunin exams, with Jiraiya telling him to wait up. In this version, Jiraiya would actually be pretty annoyed that Naruto didn't ask for his help. You think one of the legendary Sannin would be available and you wouldn't want to train under me? Gah. Naruto would say that it doesn't matter, that he can't train with anyone anyway. Jiraiya would be curious about this as he asked what does he mean, with Naruto telling Jiraiya that it doesn't matter. Finally, after enough pestering from Jiraiya, Naruto would finally tell him the truth, telling Jiraiya that Jiraiya couldn't train him in anything since he uses chakra and Naruto doesn't use chakra in battle. You don't use chakra when battling? As a shinobi? What? Jiraiya be thinking. Naruto would tell Jiraiya to throw his strongest jutsu at him right now. Jiraiya would tell him that if they really want to do that, they need to get out of the city, and if Naruto's so confident, then he will. As Jiraiya and Naruto get out of the city, Naruto would hold up his katana, telling Jiraiya he's ready, as Jiraiya would form a Rasengan. That looks interesting, Naruto be thinking. Jiraiya would run forward incredibly fast, Naruto would think, and as Jiraiya throws the Rasengan towards Naruto's chest, he was about to deactivate it just to scare Naruto. But Naruto wouldn't move, as he takes the katana and slashes downward, cutting the Rasengan in half. Wait, what? Jiraiya be thinking? Suddenly the Rasengan would dissipate, as the chakra had been absorbed by Naruto's anti-chakra and negated, with the anti-chakra on the blade having cut the Rasengan in two, before it had dissipated, from its shape being ruined. See what I'm talking about, old man? Naruto would say with a smirk. Chakra doesn't matter for me. I can't train using it anyway, so I might as well train on my own to just work on my physical training. As Naruto's about to walk away, Jiraiya would tell him to wait, asking what that is, with Naruto sighing and then explaining his anti-chakra ability to Jiraiya. Jiraiya would be impressed and would think that's a pretty amazing ability, telling Naruto he does want to train him and he has an idea. He asks Naruto if he can do anything else with his anti-chakra, and Naruto would think for a moment before deciding to show him his reverse Shadow Clone Jutsu. That's not the Shadow Clone Jutsu hand sign though, and didn't you just say you can't use chakra? Naruto would nod, telling Jiraiya to punch that clone. Jiraiya would do so as it dissipates, and immediately as it does so, the cloud that poofs from the Shadow Clone touching Jiraiya would disable his chakra points and his chakra in that right hand. Wow, that is some strong stuff, Jiraiya be thinking. Interesting, so you can use jutsu, but only if you reverse the hand signs, huh? Jiraiya would be thinking about this before he has an idea. Hey, you want to try doing a summoning jutsu? I'm curious what's even going to happen. Naruto turned around, now intrigued. Summoning jutsu? What's that? Jiraiya would smile, a blush now going on his cheeks as he says, "Do you really want me to teach it to you?" Naruto would relent. He says, yes, please teach it to me. With Jiraiya then showing him the summonings, he summons Gamabunta, the giant toad. Whoa, Naruto be thinking. That's crazy. So you can summon toads, huh? I guess you might really be the Toad Sage after all. Jiraiya would laugh, saying, ha ha ha, and you didn't believe me. After thanking Gamabunta, Jiraiya would then desummon him, as he tells Naruto and asks if he wants to give it a try. Naruto would have to put his hand on the sealing paper. As he does so, something interesting would happen, as his blood would turn black on the paper. That's interesting, Jiraiya would be saying. Never seen that one before. He would show the jutsus in reverse to Naruto, but when Jiraiya tried it, nothing would happen. But maybe, just maybe, since Naruto has the summoning contract now, we can see what happens when he does it. Naruto would bite his thumb as he feels the blood touching his tongue, as he then slams it to the ground and says, reverse style, summoning jutsu. Using the reverse seal, where Naruto was standing before, he would suddenly teleport, as he teleports to where he summoned himself from the seal. What the? Jiraiya would be amazed. That's incredible. Jiraiya began laughing, saying that Naruto might be able to use the summoning jutsu as an entirely different jutsu that's much more difficult to learn, if he can master it. Jiraiya would be thinking that maybe Minato's son might be able to master the Flying Raijin to a degree even more powerful with less chakra usage than Minato. Naruto would be amazed. He just realized he teleported. Pervy Sage, can I use this jutsu on throwable objects? As Jiraiya nods and smiles, Naruto would come to a sudden realization as he realizes that he could make a jutsu where he can teleport while fighting. This would change the entire game, as Naruto's main weakness right now is that his main ability, Anti-Chakra, coating his blades, is limited to close range. But with this, he could close that gap almost instantly. If you're wondering why this is happening, it's because the reverse summoning jutsu actually teleports the target to the land where they're summoning from. And Naruto's reverse type style of jutsu means that his effect on the jutsu is different. So Naruto is actually summoning himself to his own seals, since he can't use chakra, or thus by extension, chakra beasts, similar to the summons like the toads or the slugs or the snakes. Meaning that Naruto basically has an easier to use transportation jutsu, similar to the Flying Raijin. With Jiraiya getting ready to train, deciding that he has a plan for him and Naruto, Naruto would suddenly stop as he tells Jiraiya he has his own plans. Jiraiya would be shocked as he asks what does he mean, with Naruto telling the sage that he already has a plan, and if it's true that that man, Jiraiya, is actually one of the 3 Sannin, then he can help him. Naruto had been researching and trying to find the best medical ninja around, and this had been when he had heard about Tsunade. That's why he actually knew what the legendary Sannin were when Jiraiya mentioned it before. Jiraiya would be shocked if he's insinuating what he means to say. Yep, the next month instead of just training, you and I will be going on a little trip. That is if you want to accompany me, Jiraiya-sensei. I'm going to go look for Tsunade, the legendary healer of the Sannin, and she's going to help me save Sasuke so he can fight with me in the Chunin exams and fight his match. Naruto would say with a smile, as Jiraiya would be shocked before realizing what he means. So you're going to be training on the road, huh? Well, I guess I can't let a kid go out of the village by himself. I suppose I'll accompany you then. Also, it would be nice to see Tsunade again, he'd be thinking. Naruto would smile, saying, let's go. Before he leaves with Jiraiya, he would visit Sasuke, who's still unconscious, and tell him that he's going to get help for him. As Naruto holds Sasuke's hand up with his other hand, forming into a fist, Naruto would give him a fist bump, saying he's going to help him out, and he's going to fight with him in the Chunin exams. They're both going to become Chunin together. As Naruto walks out of the hospital with Jiraiya, the two would then begin their long journey, where Naruto would be both training his speed and effectiveness of using his anti-chakra version of the summoning jutsu on Kunai, using it to teleport a few meters forward and back between where he and Jiraiya are walking every so now and then, and also being able to realize how much of his anti-chakra it uses. Jiraiya would notice that Naruto is improving it at a massively faster rate, as he then would show Naruto the Rasengan again, asking if he would like to give it a try. Naruto would eventually, after having trained with his teleportation jutsu several times and getting a decent hang of it while they've been walking for a few days now, with them still having most of the month left to go before they need to have Tsunade back to save Sasuke by then, Naruto would give it a shot, as Jiraiya would explain the steps of learning the Rasengan to Naruto, but it just won't work. Anti-chakra is very different in how it can be controlled compared to normal chakra. With Naruto's blades being chakra receivers, it's much easier to push anti-chakra into those blades, which are meant to contain it and some sort of energy, rather than use his own energy to focus on forming anti-chakra. and especially since anti-chakra is much more wild and difficult to control than normal chakra. However, this training wouldn't be worthless, as Naruto would be able to create something different. Not the Rasengan, but something that mimics its properties. As I mentioned before, anti-chakra has the ability to mimic chakra's abilities, including different mimics of nature transformations, as well as chakra formation. And I previously stated that Naruto cannot learn the Rasengan, which is true, and that will maintain true. However, he does have something else that he's learned. Naruto, instead of condensing his anti-chakra into his body to increase his physical power, like he'd been doing, had learned that he could create a small burst of anti-chakra outside of his body over his hands, where his chakra would normally condense if he had any. An interesting side effect of this training that happens, though, is because anti-chakra cannot maintain its form outside of Naruto's body, since the natural energy, unknown to Naruto, in the air is actually what's disrupting this. If there is no nature energy left in the air that's actually fighting against Naruto's anti-chakra, then Naruto would be able to create constructs of energy. However, this would be when Naruto would discover a more scuffed version that mimics some of the Rasengan's properties. As I've already mentioned, the anti-chakra cannot maintain itself outside Naruto's body, correct? However, when Naruto forces anti-chakra outside of his body, an interesting effect would take place, as, like I said, nature energy fights against it, causing this ripple effect. This effect could actually mimic an explosion, as Naruto would unknowingly master his mimicry version of wind transformation. You might be wondering how this is happening, but if you guys remember how the original Naruto's explanation of how wind energy release works, it's by taking your chakra and grinding it together against each other, correct? That's what's happening with the Naruto's anti-chakra against the nature energy in the air. So whenever he does this, Naruto's palm will be filled with this anti-chakra mass that immediately as it comes into contact with any other chakra would it burst, making it so that when Naruto touches anything filled with chakra, he can basically cause it to have a self-implosion effect. The way this works is, think about it like a dam. Naruto's anti-chakra acts as a dam against the well of water of chakra coming from the user's body, and immediately as Naruto's anti-chakra disappears, a wave of chakra collides into the chakra that was in the rest of their body, and this causes a self-implosion to the two energies. This attack would be devastating against anyone who uses chakra as an armament, particularly someone like Gaara, because now Naruto can use their own chakra against them with this self-implosion technique. Jiraiya would be a bit impressed with Naruto, saying that he's basically created his own jutsu, and Naruto would be pretty happy with this, as Jiraiya would then say, "Go on, give it a name." Naruto would think long and hard before he eventually comes up with one. Dark Press! Or if you want the sub-edition, it would be called Yamianshin. Jiraiya would clap, saying that's a good name, and ask if he wants to test it against the Rasengan. Naruto would nod, as both Jiraiya and himself would create a shadow clone, with Naruto using reverse shadow clone, of course. As Naruto and Jiraiya's clones would then begin to create their respective attacks. Yamianshin, Rasengan. The two would now each have an orb, with Naruto having a dark, condensed energy of his anti-chakra. The blue orb and the dark one would begin to press against each other as the two clones run towards each other. Something very interesting would happen as the attacks collide. As Naruto's dark press would begin to rush towards the Rasengan, collapsing into it, suddenly both would begin to merge, as the two clones would begin getting pulled towards each other like magnets. Suddenly, as the two clones' hands would then meet each other, both would burst, as the two clones are then sent flying back before they poof. Wow, that's a light show, Jiraiya would say. Anyway, I think you've got a pretty good handle on two techniques you have now, so you should keep training them while we look for Tsunade. Naruto would nod as him and Jiraiya would continue practicing with Naruto mastering his dark press, or Yamianshin, while he also continues working on his reverse summoning style, teleportation jutsu. Jiraiya would have given Naruto Minato's old kunai he had on hand, and Naruto would change the seal on them. Naruto would now have his two katanas by his side, and behind him on his back he would have a pouch that has all of his kunai. Naruto would be ready to go, as he and Jiraiya would continue traveling to the nearest gambling city, where they'd eventually find a blonde woman. This lady would be Tsunade, the legendary Sannin. Naruto and Jiraiya enter the bar as they're prepared to find and bring Tsunade back to the Leaf Village. If you guys have any questions about the Yamianshin or Naruto's reverse summoning new techniques that he's learned using anti-chakra, make sure to comment them down below, as well as like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to my channel for more videos like this from me in the future, and hit that notification bell if you don't want to miss any uploads. Anyhow, I'm excited for the next part. I'll see all of you guys next time in part 7 for What If Naruto Had Anti-Chakra. Goodbye.